Hey friends, Jim and Lynn here. We're going to talk today about a topic we hear parents ask us about almost every day.
It's that screens that's driving us all crazy. Getting our child off the screens without World War III. It's tough.
Yeah, and I know we hear parents talk about needing the screen sometime, like to just be a babysitter for them because parents have important things to do. But then the tussles to get off and the power struggles and the threats, and sometimes parents give in and sometimes parents are tough. Let's unpack this a little bit today and see if we can get to some helpful thoughts about how to help our kids choose the wisdom needed and understand the rationale for why too much screen time is not good for them, and take responsibility a little bit for their lives.
And parents and kids working together to come up with a plan for how to make that difficult transition without so much tension in the relationship.
Now, I know, and you know, because we've both experienced it and we've talked to so many parents similarly, that it's not enough to just have the right formula to step 1, 2, and 3 to get my kids to get off the screen nicely, is it?
Not at all. I remember when when one of our kids in particular was struggling with a little bit of screen preoccupation and excessive use,
Or borderline addiction.
I paid attention to that really important foundational question, what's going on with me about this? And I noticed that when he was on screens, I just felt a little more anxious. And when he was off screens, I felt a little more peaceful. And I thought, okay, that's a sign that this is really about my anxiety. And I could sense that when I would engage and try to get him off the screens, I had this built-up anxiety from him being on screens. And engaging with anxiety with our kids is a setup for frustration.
Yeah,
for
so
everybody.
there's something in there, and we talk about this often in many arenas. It's a foundational issue, really, about taking captive to Christ's obedience, the thoughts, the judgments, the stuff that's going on in us. And it might even be well-founded. Like, it's good for us to engage with our kids, intervene when they're on the computer, and they ought not be. But is that all that I'm engaging from? Or is there this anxiety or this frustration or these pent-up things from earlier in the day or whatever it might be?
Or judgments about my child, right?
So, say more about that.
Well, just even judgments like, oh, he's so lazy. He just wants to do this all the time. She just is only focused on her friends.
Sure.
Those kind of judgments can
this
really
kid
make a difference.
has no self-control.
Yeah.
And we say these strong sort of black and white things, and then they become judgments. And then our kids, we might not even use those words, but they sense those words coming from us to them. And then they start to form a voice about who they are.
Right.
Accordingly.
Yeah. So it's really essential to engage with compassion for us and for them. Just to realize the intensity of what you're up against. And the way the researchers study this carefully, the researchers of the companies of these, screen companies.
The video game companies.
The video game companies, this is the social media companies, they study carefully how to make these things as addictive as possible. And they really are. Even back in the early days, before the science had developed to what it is, I later asked our son, when he was about 20, I asked him about what it was like when we got you off of your video games when you were a teenager. And he said, when you guys made me get off my video games, it took a while for real life to regain its relevance.
Yeah.
That's just a really key phrase that speaks to how difficult this is for kids. And
I remember that. It wasn't long after the movie Big came out. One of my favorite movies ever. But there's a scene in the movie Big, because video games and the whole video game thing is kind of a middle part of, or a central part of that movie. And I remember this video game executive saying, if we can get him to put the first quarter in, they'll never stop. We've got him. And that's been true ever since.
So it takes compassion to recognize how difficult this is on our kids, and it takes a real sense of purpose and vision. Vision that my child can grow. He is called and capable to grow the wisdom and responsibility to learn to self-monitor more over time.
So that purpose and vision is about recognizing I've got judgments, I've got anxiety, I want to replace those with something, and it's this sense of purpose and vision. And so we probably don't do that in the heat of the moment, do we?
Absolutely not. No, that's where you get prayerful, you get thoughtful, whether you're jogging or
Yeah.
washing dishes, and go, Lord, help me get your insight into this.
And I remember as a young dad, and I've talked to lots of parents who will say, I've just got this repeating thing that I say about my child that's not good. And I had those, you had those, we had those, and it wasn't good enough to just scold ourselves when we said about our children, you're just a problem, or you're just a pain, or that kid is so self-centered all the time. Like those are those judgment tapes. It wasn't helpful to just go, oh, I don't want to do that, I shouldn't do that. I needed to take some time, back away. All right, if that's not the truth, what is the truth about my child that I can begin to tell myself from God's perspective, a child built in his purpose to do good things, like you're saying.
Exactly.
And then be prepared for the next time, instead of surprised that my child is on the video a game again and won't get off, or doing whatever they're doing. And instead of being surprised, it's like, now's an opportunity to put this new lens into practice.
Yep.
And so having compassion is the starting place. How do we express compassion? What are some ways that you've helped parents express that compassion in the heat of the moment?
Well, really leaning towards that child that's struggling instead of back, and kind of backing away, being playful, lighthearted about the conflict, empathetic as we talk about it, really trying to step into their shoes, connecting well with them. Can reflect that we have compassion on them. We're not just trying to stamp out the misbehavior, so to speak. We want to understand. We want to enjoy them in spite of this.
So I'm little Jimmy. I'm 11. I'm on my video game. I'm absorbed. You've asked me to get off my game because I know the rules and I know the timing, and it's past time. Your time is up for the day, Jimmy. You need to get off, and I'm not off. And, you come into me and you remind me one more time, and you tell me but I just don't get off. What do you do in that moment as a parent? Unpack the thinking that you do to bring this approach that you're talking about to me right now in the chair.
Mm-hmm. So I would take that breath and go, this is so hard for him. And then I would just lean into it and go, buddy, you're having so much fun. Mm-hmm. I get that, but it's time to be done. You want to turn it off, or me turn it off?
Yeah, there's some firmness there, but it's a different kind of firmness than, you need to be done. I'm turning that thing off if you don't do it right now. Do you understand me, young man?
Right.
Whole different feel.
Yep, entirely.
So in your scenario as the parent and me, the child, my brain is, okay, I get it, Mom is, and I'm still frustrated. I don't want to be reminded of this. I might still be crabby, but I realize this is my thing. In scenario 2, and we've heard this and experienced this ourselves, when parents start to get big about it, now Mom's got a problem or Dad's got a problem. And so now this isn't just my problem, it's their problem too. And it's harder for me to pull away from something when we've both got a problem, because then I feel like I'm responsible for all the problem instead of just my part of it. Right. Yeah, and that's a hard idea for parents to get a hold of sometimes, that if we engage with our well-justified but icky feeling to our children ways, then in their minds, this is not just their problem, it's our problem. And we're not taking responsibility for our part. We're just forcing them to take responsibility for their part. And they feel like they lose and we win. And a dynamic is created for more of this sort of thing as we go forward.
It helps so much to be connective when we go in and engage in the moment, but then also to really connect well when we have those conversations outside of the immediate, it's time to turn it off. Let's do a role play about that in just a little bit. But before we do, I want to cover one other really key principle in addition to the connecting and empathizing. And that's really to coach a child well, to be thoughtful about, what's the just right challenge? How can we problem solve this together? How much help does my child need to get off respectfully? Mm-hmm. And is it even a reasonable transition to just tell them to get off the computer and then leave them in that place where real life doesn't have any relevance? How can I support them in that?
One of the things we talk with parents about a lot is in this realm of becoming a coach is to remind them of the problem of sin in their lives, to remind them of the goodness of God in their lives, to remind them of the redemptive purposes for which they were created, while we're being proactive to kind of help set a baseline for when we go through these sorts of troubles later on. So in the proactive sense, to connect and to coach our kids well, it, involves this message of love no matter what, this message of your God's workmanship built to do good stuff, but there's a problem of sin getting in the way sometimes, and we both experience it as humans.
Absolutely.
So you said we'd do a role play. Let's give that a shot.
Okay.
So let's set up this role play again. Instead of being in the heat of the moment, I'm little Jimmy. I'm sitting in a chair in the living room. I'm eating chips and salsa because I love chips and salsa in the middle of the day. And you've recognized your opportunity that I'm in a pretty good, relaxed, available sort of a spot, and you come in and engage with me while I'm eating the chips. And for the sake of the role play, I won't crinkle things and crunch things.
Right. And if you weren't, I'm just looking for a way to connect. So I'm going to connect through the chips this time. If you weren't, I might say, hey, Bud, let's talk. Let's go throw the ball around while we try to figure out some of these
Sure.
issues.
Yeah, so just find a connective activity.
Yep.
So you're going to pick one in this context, and we'll just go from there and see what happens. That's never perfect, but just some ideas.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I'm eating and...
Dude, you got chips and salsa?
Yeah.
I want some. I'll go get us some guac. Does that work
that'd
for
be
you?
Awesome. I didn't know we had guac. Mom.
Secret stash in the back of the fridge.
How come you didn't tell me?
So anyway, I want to just sort of talk about this challenge that we got about getting off the computer. It's so hard for you, isn't it?
Well, yes, it's hard.
Yeah. Tell me more about that.
Well, it's my friends, and we're playing, and you wouldn't come into the room if my friends were really here and interrupt us, because you tell us not to interrupt, and
Sure.
then just make me stop. You'd be
Yeah.
nice to my friends. You'd be nice to me. You'd probably tell me in a few minutes. But you just come in and you start demanding, and it's frustrating. And
Yeah.
I'm never done with something when you ask. I'm always in the middle of something.
Right.
It makes me
Yeah.
crazy.
That's a really hard thing. I can imagine that if you came into like if I was having coffee with a friend and you came in and told me to be done, that would be pretty frustrating for me too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
frustrating. You're hogging the guac. Put it over here.
So is there anything good about that conflict? Because sometimes it really escalates, doesn't it?
About the conflict for
Yeah.
the computer?
About conflict.
Anything good?
Anything
There's
good about
nothing
it?
good about it. If you just leave me alone, it'd be fine.
I can think of something good.
What?
What? That you're telling me honestly how you feel. And I'm doing what I think is the right thing. As
I want to do a
as your
timeout
mom.
to this role play for a minute, because literally when you said this thing about me that was a compliment in the middle of me expecting to be lectured, I literally kind of the hair started to stand on end a little bit. Like, what? I am telling the truth. That's good. I'm doing a good thing, and there's a whole different feeling and chemistry, even in the context of a role play that we've kind of been struggling. This is
Yep.
take 3, to have feel real.
Yeah.
That felt as real as anything.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
So let's continue. You've
Okay.
complimented me about telling me the
Yeah,
truth.
I mean, you could be walking off to your room just like, all right, fine, and then text your friends about what a jerk I am, but you're being straight with it. You're intense about something that you love.
Mom, can we just make a new deal instead of you just coming in? Can you just trust me to get off on my own?
Well, I'd be willing to. I'd love for you to get off on your own. What are your ideas about that?
Well,
Are you kind of stuck?
yeah, again, I'm trying to be a real 10-year-old and in a real 10-year-old's brain, and that sort of a question just has me going like, I have no idea, but I just asked for it, and now she's given me latitude, and I know I have to come up with something, and it's opening me to having to admit I don't really know how to get off of that thing sometimes. But I'm not going to tell you that as a 10-year-old, but that's how I'm feeling right now.
Right.
And so, I don't know, Mom, it's just so hard.
Yeah.
And I know we tried a timer and that didn't even work. And I know there's people that play this game all night, and some guys in a different country died because they never got off their video games.
I don't think that's going to happen to you, but I'm not so sure that it's always so great for you. So
Well,
that's
could
why
you
we have
just-
our time
could
limit.
you just
so
not come in and just tell me to get off right away all the time? And could you be nicer?
I'll sure work to be nicer, but I'd love it because I really don't like when I have to say, all right, you lose your computer time for tomorrow. That's your consequence. I don't like that. What I'd love is if you could, need less help so that you were getting off yourself and I didn't have to take your time away from you.
Okay.
So what
Well,
ideas do you have?
I don't know. Maybe we can try the timer again. And this time, if the timer goes off and I go past my time, then you can just turn it off.
I do have one idea. What about if I came in with a Post-it note? So I'm not verbally interrupting you, and I put a Post-it note on the computer, and then you had to be off in 1 minute.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, let's try it, and then we'll figure out something else if that doesn't work.
Okay, Mom. Thanks for the guac.
I was glad to have guac with you. Thanks for the conversation.
I don't know that a 10-year-old would really say that, but I had
That was a little out of
we could role
character.
play for a long time. And I mean, part of the point of role plays like this, we know that there's so many different ways that this can happen. But I really liked how you connected with me through the food and through the guac, and there was a light tone and there was a smile, a little bit on the edge sometimes of feeling like it was a condescending laughter, but then you stayed sincere, and I realized it wasn't in this role play.
That was more nervous.
Yeah, and maybe you would, I think over time you would learn how much laughter is enough that you're. But the point is that as a parent, you were in a lighter place, much lighter place. And that allowed you to connect, and it allowed me to feel connected with. And then, I mean, the way that you asked questions and guided me through that, really was like, I'm thinking now as a 10-year-old about the fact that this is my problem and it's hard for me. And then I more readily receive your discipline when it comes, because I recognize this is my problem alone, not yours too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think some great principles there when you're coaching with parents and you deal with this issue all the time. How do you make it succinct so parents have at least a little guide, not like a formula, but some principles to stay true to? We've talked about the foundation and staying calm and connecting and doing this coaching, but you might come to me tomorrow, Jimmy, as a 10-year-old, and you put the Post-it note on there, and 10 minutes later, like we agreed, I never even saw the Post-it note. So now what?
Yeah. So that Post-it note thing didn't work real well, did it?
So you're going to role play this again?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. So the Post-it note. So you put the Post-it note up.
Yeah.
You noticed that I kind of just ignored it. Have you followed through on just turning it off? Because I agreed to that, right? I agreed you would turn. So now you've turned it off. Mom, God, this is so. But even then, like if you come in and turn off the computer today instead of yesterday, I'm like, with this new idea in place, I'm like, I know it's my problem and I feel icky about it and I don't know how to solve this problem. I feel horrible, whether I say it or not. And I might act in all kinds of ways, but that's what's going on inside of me. And you come in now and say,
Right.
What?
That's all right, bud. We're learning. We're trying to figure it out. We'll take a break for a day, but then we'll come up with a new idea.
What do you mean take a break for a day?
Well, if you didn't get off, that's the deal. You take a break. That's how it's been for a long time.
On the first chance?
Yeah. Well, we'll figure out something else tomorrow. Maybe I'll come in tomorrow, put the Post-it note on, and give you a little back rub. So I don't interrupt you.
I like backgrounds.
I know you do. So I don't interrupt you, but I give you that little touch cue as well. We'll try that. And then if it doesn't work, we'll take another break and we'll come up with something on the next day.
Fine.
Yeah, it's tough. I get it.
Can I go?
Yep.
Well, wait a minute. That wasn't a fairy tale ending. Is that okay?
Yeah. If it has to be a fairy tale ending, then that's my anxiety, wanting everything to be perfect.
Oh, that is a difficult and hard point for parents to
Yeah.
grasp. I know
Right.
it was for me. It still is for me. I
Yeah.
want fairy tale endings in hard things, whether it's with you or my kids or anybody, really.
Yeah.
Like, I want it to have that. And then I push because I'm anxious, because I need it in order to be okay.
So in that situation, I'd probably let you just head off a little sullen, and then I'd make a point to connect later. And I might say, you know what? Tomorrow is no computer. I'm going to really put my phone away as much as I can, and I'll be available to play an extra game with you tomorrow.
So, I'm shifting gears a little bit, if that's okay. And I'm going to ask a question that I don't think you prepared for in the notes, but I think it's, I know, right? But I know some parents, they'll work a program like what we just did, and their hearts are good and everything is fun, but their kids are just really intent on this thing, and they beg and they bargain and they try to work out deals, and if necessary we had a child that actually figured out a way to get his own little device so that at night he could hide it and play it after he was in bed. He just wouldn't get off the thing.
Right.
So there's this deep sort of thing going on. What do you tell parents, or how do you talk to parents when that's the case?
Well, I think it's really important for parents to understand how these devices affect their kids. And in the show notes, in the blog post, we'll have a list of symptoms of excessive screen use, of problematic screen use, I think it's called.
Yeah.
So you can really evaluate, do you have a serious brain problem here where your child truly is addicted? Because during video games, dopamine doubles. And so it's this huge dopamine hit. And psychologists have made the statement that dopamine is the underlying chemical of all addiction. So it really is a serious issue.
Yeah.
And if you're doing your best and you are still really stuck, it's time to get some professional help. There's things that you can read to really be familiar with what goes on in a child's brain. And then get some coaching. It can be really tough.
So the short of what I hear you saying is that if you feel like you connect well and there's warmth and there's sensibility and that you don't get caught into this and your kids continue to struggle, it's time to enlist some help of some sort. Either help just by way of deeper learning about, and they've actually now labeled this as an addictive disorder.
Absolutely.
And because of what happens in the brain, the chemistry, your body becomes dependent on it, and it's problematic and requires intervention, coaching, counseling, diagnosis, pediatrician. But a lot of parents will try to get those diagnoses before they've done the work we're describing today.
Right. So we've got a lot of resources for you in the blog post that you can read up on too, because we want to equip you for this. This challenge. But one quick little just practical thing that can help is, especially when you're trying to empower your child to get off the screens more easily, is to just offer for a while, for a couple weeks, bud, I'll go just shoot some hoops with you right after, because that'll help your brain readjust. It'll help real life kind of come alive for you again, and it'll give us a chance to connect. It really helps our kids when they know that we put some skin in the game, that we are self-sacrificing in order to meet their needs and connect and help them through this difficult challenge.
Yeah, I really like that, which is, for most of both of our careers, when correction is hard, the goal is not to just find a new way to correct, but it's to move toward the struggling child with connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And these ideas that we talk about are ideas we talk about all the time in different ways through the lens of the Connected Families framework. And if that's something that you want to learn more about, for sure, look at our show notes, look at the blog posts, get on our website, nose around, sign up for our email tips, and learn about this framework that we teach parents that we've really kind of guided you through today.
Yep, this is a really tough issue, really tough for parents. And I'd just like to close us in prayer. Lord, we thank you that you are so with us in the midst of this struggle, that your mercy is overflowing to these parents and kids, and you understand the potential in each child that you have built into them. So I ask your special guidance for these parents. Give them the wisdom they need to come alongside their kids and guide them towards your purposes, and to truly connect and encourage them well. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Connected Families Podcast. We hope you got tips that you can use in your parenting today. Please subscribe and leave us a positive review so other families can find us and learn how to parent with peace and connection.